So, Lizzie, thank you very much for the intro. As she said, my name's Tim Craighead. I'm the Global Chief Content Officer for Bloomberg Intelligence, which is the investment research business within Bloomberg. And what I would like to do today, I think, is quite on point. I mean, this conversation going on today is all about taking advantage of innovation within technology, how you're applying it, how you're driving your business. And the survey that we've now done twice and will continue to do on a semi-annual basis is of chief information officers across companies, large and small, a blend of US and European with some Asian across all industry groups. And essentially what we have found, it's relevant from an investor perspective, which is our core business because it's telling you who's gaining share, who's front of mind. It's also quite interesting, I think, from this perspective because it can be a good touchstone in terms of what are other companies doing, who is gaining mind share, wallet share, and some of the thoughts on why. So, but yeah, I think it's, like I said, an interesting point of reference. I'll take about 10 minutes to run through this. The summary that I would throw out with you on this is that we're seeing a shift. We're seeing a shift from internal testing to deployment of real life tools. And you heard that on this panel that we just enjoyed listening to. We'll go through some of the thoughts and details, but we've looked into how well are companies feeling about their positioning right now. What are their priorities? Where's their focus? Things along those lines. So without further ado, I'll jump in. I'd start with three quick takeaways. The first is Microsoft is clearly gaining mind share and wallet share, at least according to our survey, across a number of elements, whether it's cloud, whether it's inferencing. This is specifically about data query and inferencing using their systems. Second takeaway, it's already been mentioned, I think, at least a dozen times today and will probably come up another dozen, and that is cybersecurity. It has jumped significantly in the prioritization of what CIOs are telling us. No surprise given some pretty high-profile outages that have occurred over the course of the past 12, 18 months. And lastly, as the shift is going towards deploying AI and technology in real-world applications, customer service is front of mind. We just heard it here on the panel. Salesforce is an interesting touchstone with that given their positioning, and you'll get some details in a second. So first thing, let's start by just simply saying if any of you in your companies are feeling maybe a bit anxious that you're not quite there yet, you're not really ready for this crazy, wave of development, you're in good company. The vast majority of companies in our survey suggested they're not ready. It's changed a little bit from where it was 6 months ago, but this is what's pushing a lot of development, a lot of spending. So when is the money being spent? Now is the answer. It's over the next 6 to 12 months. We continue to see that there is a distinct appetite for CIOs to push their development along these lines. It's not a 3 or a 5 year, let's brainstorm and think about it down the road. It's here and it's now. So what are the priorities? There's a lot of information on this slide, and I am happy to share the slide deck, rest assured. But what is important in this is if you look on the left side and you look at the very first column that says December 23, you'd see that there are areas like servers and storage that were pretty high priority items. They're not now. You can look at on the far right-hand side, cloud and AI models that had some mind share 6, 9 months ago. Now they have a lot of mind share. And you can see in the middle, cybersecurity, as I had alluded to, has had a massive jump relative to where it was. There are a couple points that I would also make with this data in mind. Number one, cybersecurity, as big of a priority as it is a relatively small component of most budgets. It's just super important. You got to get it right, stating the obvious. So it looks really big here, but it's a small number. Second point that I would make is that, at least in what we're hearing, while this shift is going on and there's a ton of focus on developing applications and tools and deploying technology, that in fact the overall tech budget at most companies isn't really changing. This is a bit of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. The advancements in AI deployment and tools and whatnot is coming at the expense of other elements more traditional in tech budgets. Maybe this is because of high interest rates. Maybe this is because of geopolitical uncertainty. We've been disappointed in 2024 on how this has trended. I think the street broadly has been. There's hope and expectation in 25 that maybe things relax a little bit. Interest rates are starting to come down. We've got clarity on the election front, good, bad, or otherwise. And maybe things start to relax and loosen. We'll see. That's our current expectation. So if that's the background, let's get into some of the details. I had mentioned that cloud is gaining priority. Well, which cloud partners? Amazon, Microsoft, Google are the biggest players in the business. Sorry, the slides have gotten cut off here a little bit, but nonetheless, you can see the names. It's a big three. There's definitely a triumvirate here, no surprise. An interesting thing, though, has been a bit of a shift over the last 6 or 9 months from Amazon towards Microsoft. And we think that's part and parcel of the next slide, which is what large language models, what foundational models are preferred. And at least from our survey, what we found late last year was that OpenAI was preferred. What we find in the third quarter of this year is that it's even more preferred. And there is a bit of a virtuous circle, it seems, playing back and forth between Microsoft and OpenAI, given their partnership. If you're Microsoft, you're using OpenAI. If you like OpenAI, it might take you to Microsoft. That's feeding off of each other. What else? Well, if we go digging into what capabilities companies are looking at exploring or implementing, and think about the three sets on the left, there's training of foundational models, there's fine-tuning of these models, and then there's development of generative AI tools. Think chatbots becoming co-pilots and co-pilots becoming agents, and some of what we talked about here with the banks and with BT. Let's dig a little bit into each of these categories. And one thing I would comment before I switch is just obviously the one that really jumped was that development front. This goes back to that shift that I mentioned right up front. We're seeing testing turning into real-world applications. So what about training of foundational models? Where are these workloads going? It goes back to what we talked about earlier. Amazon and Microsoft stand out. Google is a third. There is a little bit of that shift from Amazon to Microsoft in terms of what, mind share, wallet share we're seeing. It's also notable that a number of other providers are starting to pop up. And maybe this is because they have areas of industry expertise or certain areas that they can bring a product to bear now that deployment is starting to work through. If you go down a level and think about inferencing workloads, what's going on here? Again, stand out Microsoft and Amazon, but there is that big shift from Amazon towards Microsoft, and again, maybe that's that OpenAI link. Same comment, we're seeing other providers starting to pop up in terms of who CIOs are looking at using and partnering with. Go down to the last level about developing applications and real tools. I think looking at customer service is a really interesting area to consider in that that's where the rubber meets the road, where you're connecting with clients. And there's a lot of discussion and talk about how AI might help and enhance that relationship. What we found, and we're missing a couple of things on the slide from the standpoint of legends, but The left hand, well, it's those three buckets that we just looked at from the standpoint of training of workloads, fine-tuning of workloads, and developing tools and applications. All three of those areas for Salesforce, who these numbers focus on, have jumped. Salesforce is an interesting point of reference from our vantage point because they're the global leader in customer service software. They got roughly a 40% global share. If their clients are starting to spend more on these areas, it's a pretty good reference point in terms of what you might be seeing beyond. That's what I wanted to give a real broad overview of what we found in our survey, a couple of high spots. What I'd like to do next is sort of bring things to a close by giving everyone maybe 4 homework assignments, which might be a little bit unusual. But the first one's kind of fun. I assume pretty much everybody listens to podcasts. Go to your favorite thing, Apple, Spotify, take your pick. Find the Bloomberg Intelligence Tech Disruptors podcast. The last several episodes are with technology C-suite folks talking quite a lot about real-world applications and examples. The one from a few weeks ago with Mark Benioff from Salesforce I thought was particularly notable in talking about how they're bringing agents to bear across a lot of their platforms. And there's a number of really interesting, good examples of companies and organizations, profits and nonprofits, and how they're using AI and agents to expand the connectivity, the efficiency, and the experience of their sales forces. Second homework assignment, if you want more detail on our CIO survey, I only touched on a little bit of this. There's a much larger report. We're happy to send it along. If you've got a Bloomberg terminal in your company, you can access it there directly, but give me a holler. I'm happy to send it. And before I get to this, 2 more homework assignments. If you're traveling next week to New York City, we have our 3rd Generative AI conference at our headquarters in Midtown. Quite an interesting event. Its title is, Can AI Deliver on the Productivity Promise? A lot of similar topics as to what we're discussing here, and a host of interesting companies that will be on showcase. And the last homework assignment that kind of goes along with that conference is next week we will be publishing our 3rd update on our big comprehensive generative AI report. And if you'd like a copy of this when it hits the press, so to speak, next Wednesday, we'd be happy to share. Last comment, I'll just simply close with a reference on Bloomberg Intelligence. As I had mentioned, we are the investment research business at Bloomberg. We've grown over the last 15 years into one of the largest investment research shops around the globe. So I touched base here today on a little sliver of what our tech team is doing, but we've got roughly 500 folks around the globe covering markets, industries, 2,000 companies. We do a lot of work across pretty much the waterfront. Happy to tell you more if you'd like, but it's all on the terminal. And with that, I'll bring my comments to a close. So thank you very much.